All right, so here in my hand, I have a cover of an '03 draft issue that Slam just dropped. And for those of you listening on Apple or Spotify, on this cover, we have none other than Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, arguably the best draft class ever. All right. So, my question for you today is, man, what are your overall thoughts on this draft class?
Overall thoughts is greatness,
Hmm.
legendary. You look at they have LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade. LeBron James is arguably the best player to ever dribble a basketball. You can make that
Hmm.
claim coming from that '03 draft class. And you got Carmelo Anthony, a top 10 offensive talent in the history of the game. Then you got Dwayne Wade, a top 3 shooting guard of all time. Probably to me, the greatest defensive shooting guard when we're talking about just blocking shots in the history of the game. So you got a lot of guys on there. And then you got Chris Bosh, a guy that kind of like, if you just look at Chris Bosh and what he did for the Miami Heat and kind of playing like that small ball lineup with the Miami Heat, it was had a lot to do with Chris Bosh's ability to space the floor. So I say greatness, I say legendary. That's the first thing that comes to mind when
Yeah.
we talk about the '03 draft class.
Yeah, definitely. And even when we talk about early on in their career, they all came in and had like an instant impact. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
even with Wade picking up that chip early on in his career, and
23 years
it's
old.
just yeah, and it's just a reminder like yo, like even though we talk about when players come into league and it takes time, their impact was immediate. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
obviously, four guys on the cover, definite first ballot Hall of Famers. But just overall, what they've done for the game, honestly, on and off the court. You know what I'm saying? On and off the court has just been crazy. So that's why we always say, there's no doubt that they're one of the best draft class ever. But if you had to choose one of the four that's been on the cover, man, which one would you say has had the most effect on like your views towards basketball?
Well, me personally, Dwayne Wade is my favorite player of all time, other than Allen Iverson. So just growing up and kind of trying to, I play college basketball, kind of try to do some of the things that Dwayne Wade did on the court, his
Hmm.
slash ability, being able to operate the second zone of the basketball court, the floaters, being a stout defender as well. So I kind of grew up like, you know, idolizing Dwayne Wade, his play style and his game. So definitely to me personally, he has the biggest like impact on me. But overall, I would say in the NBA entire landscape from this draft class is of course LeBron James. Everything he's done on the basketball court, coming in, having those crazy expectations that nobody's ever had. And then not only, you know,
Mm.
he exceeded those expectations. He's the greatest all-around player in the history of the game, in my opinion. And also, like I said, arguably the greatest basketball player to ever play the game. If you don't think that's true, that's fine. That's of course that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's really LeBron, Michael Jordan, and Kobe Bryant. And to me, it's just like LeBron's in that conversation, even if some people think he's the greatest of all time, like I do. So
Yeah, and it's crazy too. You mentioned the word expectations. Like the expectations that he had coming into the league is like there's very few players, if ever, if any at all, that
ever,
have ever had to
ever,
deal with kind of that pressure. And I mean, we all know like there's situations where guys get hyped up and they just don't reach that level, right? But
yeah,
LeBron, especially then at like a young age, straight from high school, being a teenager and still being able to handle, all the pressure that comes with that. But you touched on Wade and Bron. So I'm gonna address Melo. Even though
yeah,
my guy went to Cuse, it's all love on this side. But when we talk about Denver Melo, man, and just his rookie year and just his overall like scoring ability, I've always said that we all know Melo is one of the greatest scorers of all time. But to be able to score at any and all level, right, from three, the midi, and the post, free throw, all that, I mean, he's up there. And on
yeah,
Bosch's end, man, like not even just from a unique talent perspective. I want to talk about Chris Bosh from a sacrifice standpoint. A
yeah.
lot of guys, man, if they're put, because again, people forget that like Bosh was really like that in Toronto. You
He
feel me?
was.
Like I know folks
He was
love talking
special.
about Vince and the Damari era and all that, but
Yeah,
Bosh was special in Toronto, and to be able to go to a team where D Wade is already the king of that city, and LeBron is just the greatest player of all time in his peak at that time, and people are looking at you as like, okay, like having Chris Bosh, quote unquote, as a third option, and to be able to, really accept that role and just bring championships to that city. I mean, it just goes to show you how special that class is as a whole. But it's wild though, man, to see that 3 of them ended up becoming like actual teammates. You
Yeah.
feel me? Like on an individual level, we know what they bring, but like
Mhm.
they ended up becoming teammates, man.
Yeah, it was a great class. It's arguably the best class of all time. A lot of
Oh
people are going
yeah.
to say, well, of course you got the 1996 draft class. If it's probably, if you're going to pick the '03 class, a lot of people are going to say probably the 1996 class may be better or up there as
Mhm.
well. But to me, you can't go wrong with neither of those classes. I look at the '03 class with LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, but then you got the 1996 draft class, which is also even phenomenal. Kobe Bryant, Allen
Mhm.
Iverson, Steve Nash, Ray Allen as well. And then I can understand why people would probably get the edge to the 1996 class because if you look at it, Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson were two young phenoms that came in the NBA and set this entire NBA culture just crazy. If you really think about it, Kobe Bryant, what
Yeah.
he did, and then Allen Iverson culturally, and it was just like after Michael
Oh yeah.
Jordan, then we got Kobe. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? And then we got Allen Iverson culturally and everything he was about. So that's why people probably get an edge to the 1996 draft class over the '03. Because if you look at those key four players, Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, what they did, two phenoms. The '03 class, they had LeBron James, who was a phenom, but Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and Carmelo Anthony, I wouldn't say they had a bigger impact than, Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant. So
Right. And I mean, you got to think about too, especially the time at which they entered the league. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
it would amaze me. It's interesting to just think about what would happen if that '03 draft class was now, right? Like if they were like the 2021 draft class, like if LeBron was entering the league right now, with the way social media is, with the way YouTube is, and all of this, he was getting this hype before this. You feel me?
Yeah.
Like, which was tough to do, but now Hey, and I'm not even just talking about the basketball side, but from a business standpoint and just overall the attention that these guys were able to bring to the game. But it's just crazy to think though too, like going back to Melo, where we kind of compare like Denver Melo to New York Melo. Um, which one kind of first comes to mind when you think of Carmelo Anthony?
Man, when I think of Carmelo Anthony, Denver Melo was special. I
Mm,
think he was going up, he was in a tough Western Conference, went to the Western Conference Finals, had to deal with Kobe Bryant. If it wasn't for Kobe and the crew, he probably in the Spurs, he probably would have went to a championship.
mm,
That's why I always hate when people talk about like, yo, Carmelo Anthony's not a winning player. He was in the West. It's a battle. Each and every year is a battle in the West. But probably New York Melo was even more special than Denver Melo because he was more seasoned. He was more
mm.
polished. His game was more
Yeah.
pure. The prettiest jump shot in the history of the game, in my opinion, in Carmelo Anthony. Even though the New York Knicks weren't winning games, what he did and took on that challenge to go play at Madison Square Garden, where a lot of superstars don't want to go and take on that challenge. Carmelo embraced that challenge. It was like, yo, I want to be a Knick. And that's why, to me personally, I think he's the greatest Knick of all time. So,
Mm. Well, I'm with that. I'm with that. And to think too, though, man, and we're gonna touch on this later in the episode. To think that he could have went two, or to think that he could have went earlier in that draft. You know, look, we got some special moments with Carmelo and Denver and New York, of course. But just to think that there's a possibility that he could have joined that Detroit team. Um,
yeah, we're going to
just
talk about
just
it.
could just the idea
Yeah.
of him being able to score and that's it, right? Like you surround a high level scorer and just tell him like, yo, score the basketball. You don't gotta worry about anything else. You know what I'm saying? That just, makes a person's job a hell of a lot easier. Um, but even now, like I said, we talk about Melo. Let's switch gears to Chris Bosh too. I want to, shout out to all the lefties out there. Um, what's like your favorite part about Chris Bosh's game that you feel is unique about him and the way that he played?
I would definitely say the way he kind of changed his game over the course of his career. Like you said, the big
Mm,
three, they don't win those championships without Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh was a hybrid athletic big man that can do everything on the basketball court in Toronto. Then he comes down to Miami And Miami Heat didn't need him to be that version that he was in Toronto. He comes down and he basically becomes a guy that can operate at the second level on the basketball court, but then started to work on his game where he became, those corner threes what Chris Bosh was known for in Miami, hitting those big shots, and just really improved his overall game. So that's how I kind of look at Chris Bosh and kind of remember Chris Bosh, his impact, and also the block. Against with the Miami Heat and getting the offensive rebound, kicking it out to Ray Allen, and then on the opposite end,
mention that offensive rebound, yeah.
The blocking against Danny Green as well. If that doesn't happen, if Chris Bosh doesn't do that, it's a lot of conversations that's probably not going to be ever had if that didn't happen. So that's how I look at Chris Bosh. He's a legend. He would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, but we know what happened,
But yeah, I mean, like, to me, one of the most interesting dynamics of like basketball is being able to adjust, right? Like, especially when you enter the league. Like, look, everyone that gets drafted is talented, right? That's the reason why, you're there. But to be able to change your game, right, from being a low post scorer, and he definitely had opportunities to be in the post with Miami, but it definitely wasn't the same. To now being somewhat of like a catch and shoot type of guy. I mean, that ability, mentally and physically on the basketball court, is something that definitely deserves some respect in terms of just like, yo, there aren't too many guys now or in the history of the game that can really make that adjustment, especially when you talk about playing with other great players and having your role be changed. Hell, kind of at the height of your career. You know what I'm saying? This wasn't like, this wasn't Bosh's like second year in the league, or he wasn't at the tail end of his career. You know what I'm saying? Being asked, all right, we want you to take a different role. This is Chris Bosh here. You know what I'm saying? There were plenty of NBA teams that would have been excited to have him, and to know that he was still saying like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna join these guys and pick up some chips. This look, bro. This is a very special class. But one thing I'm gonna ask you is,
you gotta show it again. Gotta put it up.
Oh yeah. Let me show you how to cover again. Hold on. It's live now, y'all. All right, slamgoods.com. It's live now, y'all. Definitely a fire cover. We had the 96 draft issue before. This one is giving the 03 draft their flowers. But yeah, man, and a question that I have is, man, do you think we'll ever see another class like this again?
Man, I don't know. That's what classes we got? What class did Trae Young come in? Trae Young, Luka Doncic.
You got Trae, you got Luka, and you got DeAndre.
And who else?
You got DeAndre. I mean, hey,
that
one of those boys in the finals right now.
That class, that's what I'm saying. That class could be special. And also, we may look at it's the Jason Tatum's class. It was Jason Tatum,
Markel, Alonzo, De'Aaron,
Markel, Alonzo,
Spider.
Yeah, Ben Simmons. No, he was before that. But yeah,
he was.
I think Jason Tatum's class has a chance when we look back. Could be very, very special with Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, the crew. Even Lonzo Ball has a lot of potential still as well.
That Bam and Swiper.
Yeah, I think it was Bam.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, one of those two classes.
It's funny, they were just hooping together, Bam and Jason. But yeah, I'm looking at this 2018 draft right now. You got obviously DeAndre pick number 1. You got DeAndre, you got Luka, you got Trae, you got Jaren Jackson, you got Colin Sexton, you got Shea. All right, you got MPJ. There's a lot of young talent right now in the league, and I mean, waves are definitely being made in terms of just overall production. So, I mean, too, even this upcoming draft, I mean, we're getting ready to chop into that a little bit more, but I mean, there is definitely talent, and I like the direction in which the league is heading. I don't think there's going to be a crazy fall off. Obviously, we have LeBron and KD and Steph, all these great guys in the league, but I don't think there's going to be a while like, all right, man, and these guys are retiring now. Now what?
The end of the legends, the guys that were really fighting for top all-time rankings and stuff like that, that's about to come and go. And then
Oh yeah,
we're gonna have a more appreciation of like, yo, just stars, superstars, guys that are really, really good, young players that we may not know until the end of the career what they can be for as like a top 10, top 20, top 25 list. But like the guys that LeBron, KD, Steph Curry, James Harden, they're in the tail end of their careers, and it's going to be eventually where like those are the last guys where we're going to look at probably on these super top 10 and top 15 lists of all time. And then we're going to start really just getting like these young players like the Jason Tatum's, the Trey Youngs, the Luka Doncic's, the Shai Gills,
yeah.
Donovan Mitchell, those type of players. So
And do you think too, like, cause I mean, look, I just think it's crazy that when you look at like the top guys from the '03 draft and thinking that three of them ended up becoming teammates, moving forward, do you think that's going to be something that happens often?
yeah,
Like
I think it's
guys
gonna
in the
happen.
same
Yeah,
draft class joining?
guys are taking control of their careers. This is not
Mm,
the NBA back in the past where we have guys staying on the same team for 8, 9, 10 years. After they signed that first supermax contract after a rookie deal, guys start looking to make moves after the second year in that contract. They're going to start
yeah,
doing the Anthony Davis, and that's what I'm saying. Like, don't be surprised in a couple years when Jason Tatum was like, you know what? I want to be out. If the Boston Celtics don't win a championship, so it's a lot of guys that are going to be able to control their careers because we live in the NBA is a player movement in a players league. So they have control. If a guy says he doesn't want to be there, and then if he says, you know what, you can trade me there to this team and I'm not going to sign there and I don't want to be there, it's kind of like you stronghold the organization. So
right.
it's definitely I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see guys teaming up and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not mad at it. At the end of the day, this is all a business. It's called
Yeah.
leverage. Look, if you are good at what you do and you provide value to an organization, you know, now the fans of that city, might be a little upset, but hey, you gotta worry about yourself, your family, your career before anyone else's. So at the end of the day, they're still, I guess, somewhat employees. So it's like, you know, if a guy leaves, honestly, you know what it is too? You just gotta enjoy the time a player, you know, is at a franchise. Because you really don't know
Yeah.
when their last season is gonna be, especially when we talk about trades. I mean, free
Yeah.
agency is one thing because that, allows a guy to choose, but trades happen any and every day. But the reason why
Yeah.
I asked, what I'm saying, as we hop into this next segment, just about young guys in this draft, we're getting ready to talk about this upcoming draft. I know we're around the NBA Finals, but with the draft being pretty soon, a team, the Detroit Pistons, have that number one pick. So um, let's get some thoughts on the Detroit Pistons. Let's talk to my man Rob real quick. What's up, y'all? It's Theus McBee. Make sure you go follow No Pump Fakes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, so we're here with Rod Beard, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit News. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Hey, I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Sure thing. So the first question that we have for you, man, is what should the Pistons do with the number one pick?
Take Cade Cunningham. That's a very simple, easy answer. Do that. Sometimes simple is good, simple is better. But if you want to overthink it, they have to get an amazing package back for that number one pick. Like they have to get either number one or number two or number three and a bunch of other stuff. That's
Mm,
the conversation starter is we have to talk about number two or number three. I'm not going down to 7 or 14 or anything else. It has to be number two or number three. The only reason that you pass on Cade is that you feel like Jalen Green or Evan Mobley is the next best thing, and you're getting some other stuff to go along with it.
mm. Okay. I mean, I'm not mad at it. Do you feel though that Detroit Pistons fans might be upset if they don't go with Cade at number one, but they keep the pick? They keep the pick, but they choose someone else.
I don't think there's a chance in you know what that they're going to pick Cade Cunningham with the number one pick. Make no mistake about it. The only way that they end up with something else is if they make the pick and trade it for some other stuff, similar to what the Celtics and Sixers did a few years ago with Markelle Fultz and Jason Tatum, or if it's a Chris Webber type thing like that, it's a draft night deal that gets announced that way. They will pick Cade Cunningham with that number one
Mm,
pick. Whether they keep him or do something else is the only question that's here.
yeah.
You feel strongly about the Cade Cunningham pick for the Detroit Pistons. Talk to us about his game and why you think he would be a great fit with the Detroit Pistons?
I think it works because he checks a lot of boxes for you, and he fills a lot of voids. A ball handling guy who can shoot, who can play defense and play at four positions defensively. At 6'8", he can guard some smaller power forwards if you're getting that type of lineup. But he can play the 1, the 2, or the 3 for you and do it very capably. He showed that he can create his own shot, good in the ISO, and that's what the Pistons need right now. Last year, they Jeremy Grant was really the only guy who could create and do that with the ball in his hands. And as they got toward the end of the season, they just didn't have a lot of other options. They had to run offense to try to figure out what they were going to do. That led to shot clock violations and a bunch of other stuff. You get a guy like Cade who can create a shot and play defensively that way for you and facilitate for others. Yeah, you just don't pass on that when you get that opportunity.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, how do you think Cade kind of fits in with the current roster that you all have now? Because I mean, obviously, anytime you're the number one pick, I feel like that's your top priority, and then you go from there. But considering the team that you have structured right now, how does he fit in with that specific roster?
Well, Pistons fans and everybody else has kind of parsed every word that Troy Weaver said in that lottery presser. But the most important thing that stuck out to me is they're not in a position to draft for need. And I think where Cade fits immediately is in that backcourt as that other off guard. But looking at what they did last year with Killian Hayes at the number 7 pick, he's traditionally a point guard, but then he also played off the ball a little bit, and he looked to be a little bit more comfortable off the ball. So again, I think that's why you draft Cade, is that it lets you flex and get some of these other guys in different positions, gets Killian off the ball, gets another scorer for Jeremy Grant, and just takes a lot of pressure off of everybody. And we're seeing with the Clippers, for example, that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard handle the ball a lot more, and they're not traditional. Even when they had Reggie Jackson, they had other guys bringing the ball up, and you're seeing more teams do that. So the point guard position and the point guard title isn't what it used to be, unless you've got a Chris Paul or somebody like that that's specifically your ball handling point guard. But there aren't very many of those guys left around the league anymore, anyway.
Yeah, now you guys had 3 first-round draft picks last year. You drafted Hayes, Bay, and Stewart in last year's NBA draft. Now, Hayes had a kind of up and down rookie season, but to me, Bay and Stewart really stood out to me. And I wanted to know, like, how do you feel about Bay, who has potentially, in my eyes, can be one of the best three-point shooters in the league someday, and also Stewart, who's a double-double machine?
Yeah, I think those are two outstanding selections, especially given that they didn't have a summer league or a real rookie onboarding season to get things together. They just kind of got thrown into the mix right after the draft. But both of those guys fit in with what they're trying to do. And this is sort of, if you're going to say the Pistons might be preparing for an Evan Mobley sort of thing, is they moved Stewart to the 4 a little bit and had him play a 4
Mhm.
position a little bit at the end of the season. So that might be some preparation for that. But again, it's just, you're not drafting for need, you're drafting for trying to figure out where guys can fit and positional flexibility to see how many positions different guys can play and how that's going to help your roster moving forward. But Bay, I agree, is a top tier shooter and made an all rookie team, first team all rookie, and Stewart as a second team all rookie. Didn't even play starters minutes for most of the season, but came out like gangbusters, led rookies in rebounding, really was just an energy boost for them anytime he was on the court. So building blocks are there. And in a rebuild like this, you want to take as many bites of the apple as you can. And the Pistons did it last year with 3 first-round picks. And by all accounts, those 3, at least 2 of those 3, panned out very well. And Killian Hayes, the jury's still out on what he's going to be.
Yeah. What's one thing that you feel people might sleep on when it comes to the Pistons? And the reason why I ask that, because, naturally, whenever a team gets the number one pick, a lot more attention is, driven to that franchise. So for those that, let's say may not pay as much attention to the Pistons, what's one thing that you feel like, all right, here's something that you all definitely need to know about this organization?
Well, I think it's the general manager, Troy Weaver. Last year was his first season. He turned over the roster completely. 16 of the 17 players were new. And he got rid of the Blake Griffin contract that many people thought just wouldn't be able to be moved at all. But really brought in players that he thought would be culture changers and guys who would be the type of player that he wanted. And he likes these long, kind of lanky guys that have a +4, +5 on between their height and wingspan. So that's the type of roster he's constructed, and he's done it without having very much cap space to maneuver with. So next year, the Pistons are going to have that Blake Griffin contract off, which is $30 million off the cap. And that's again with Cade, presumably with Cade, and then with that cap space next year, they'll be able to maneuver. But the key to all of this has been Troy Weaver, came over from Oklahoma City and comes out of that Sam Presti school of putting a roster together. And that's what people just don't understand is how much of an influence he's had in 1 year of changing this roster around.
Yeah. Now you guys definitely. Now you guys talked. You talked a little bit about Jeremy Grant and his impact on the Detroit Pistons last year, and basically how he went from averaging 12 points per game, then coming to the Pistons averaging 22 points per game. We know if it wasn't for Julius Randle's crazy year in the New York with the New York Knicks, that he would have been the most improved player of the year. So, what are some things that Jeremy Grant needs to do to become not just a great scorer, but take that next step and becoming an all-star caliber player?
I think he just needs some help is the number one thing. And we saw at the beginning of the year when he really started to break through was when he had Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin on this roster. And those were the guys who could handle the ball and be the number one defensive option for teams to try to stop, where Grant could come in and just do what he does. Now, at the end of the season, when Grant was the number one guy that teams had to stop, that's when he had a little bit more trouble. And then he was just playing just stupid minutes toward the middle and the end of the year. And his usage rate was way up there too. So I think he just needs more help, more offensive help, and more options that the defense is just going to have to spread around and deal with him. But I think too, his going to the rack as much as he did, he absorbed a lot of contact, took a lot of fouls. He's just going to have to get stronger and be able to do that on a more frequent basis and be able to finish when he does that.
Yeah.
Do you
And
think
that's
he's a
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
go ahead,
Theus? No, do you think he's a true number one, or do you think he's a guy that came over and kind of exceeded a whole bunch of expectations? He signed a 3-year, $60 million deal with you guys, or do you think he's a guy that can really like take your team to the next step, or do you think he's just playing on a roster where it's like not a lot of talent, and that's why he was being that number one option?
I think that just remains to be seen. He can be a number one, and he showed that. But you need a different type of dog to be just an everyday, every possession number one type of guy, and we're seeing that with Milwaukee, especially. That Giannis just can't do that all the time. He needs a Chris Middleton to be that guy, and I think that's what Jeremy Grant can be. And maybe he gets some of that with the Olympic team selection. Is that being around a bunch of guys like that? That some of that rubs off. He learns some of that of how to be that number one guy and talks to these guys. But he took a gamble on himself, and it paid off handsomely. And the 3 years and 60 million, people thought that was a little bit too much to pay for a guy who wasn't a number one and didn't have a proven track record of being that. And he showed he can do that. So I think it just remains to be seen of what this next season is going to be. And it's a 3-year deal, but I think he can be a longer term guy for the Pistons if they get the pieces around him to work.
Yeah. And how do you think, his time spent with that Olympic team is going to end up helping the Pistons during this upcoming season?
I think it just rubs off. They talk about iron sharpening iron, but just being around those guys and being able to talk to them and trade secrets or just to guard them and defend them on a day to day and have them guard him the same sort is going to just pay big dividends in his growth and his expansion of his skill set. I think that's just going to be big for him in his growth.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things that we talked about on this episode was going back to the '03 draft to kind of switch gears a little bit. Near that '03 draft is that '04 Pistons team. And we all know what kind of could have been with that draft in that team, Melo being in Detroit. But how do you think that 2004 Pistons team would have played in today's NBA?
They would be something terrible. I mean, they would wreck you because, and we talked to Ben Wallace about this a couple of weeks ago, that they were switching before teams really switched as much as they did defensively, and they could switch everything because Tayshaun Prince was their small forward, and he was like 6'9", 6'10", with these pterodactyl sized arms. Ben Wallace could switch and guard point guards on the pick and roll before people really even did that. He was a small ball center playing 6'9", and guarding Shaq, but at the same time, he could switch and guard anybody on a pick and roll and on a switch. So I think they would be very favorable to anybody right now. And we're talking about 17 years ago that they were sort of founding some of these principles defensively that teams are starting to use now.
And it is crazy to think though too, like in that 5-game series, the Lakers only scored 90 one time. And obviously, that it's a different league now, the 3-point shooting, all that.
Yeah.
But even still, I mean, you hold a team like that, that type of defensive ability, man, just goes to show kind of how, that how different that team truly was.
Right.
It would just be interesting to see how they would play in today's league.
Yeah, because you think just dump it down to Shaq every time. And when Shaq's not there, you ISO Kobe and you can figure something out. And that was the team. That was the Karl Malone team too, wasn't it? Gary Payton. They had a squad that should have been able to run people off the court. But again, it tells you how good that Pistons team was defensively. Chauncey wasn't a joke defensively. Rip wasn't a joke. And Sheed was a cheat code as, again, a small ball type center that could play out on the perimeter. I mean, that team coming to play now could stand up to a lot of teams right now in the way that things are done.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think, though, too, like how the game has evolved and changed, and just defense versus offense, three-point shooting versus the post. But that team just kind of showed you that, like, yo, 5 guys collectively. And it wasn't just like a superstar thing, I think, with that. Like, that was a true definition of a team. So I just had to, kind of show some respect to an actual team.
They didn't even shoot the three that well.
Yeah,
I mean, She did. Ben Wallace certainly didn't. Tayshaun and Rip were kind of okay from three. That team,
Chauncey,
if you put them right now, they could make it.
And even Rip, I mean, like when we talk about the midi, we had episodes on just mid-range shooting and just Rip run around screens. It was, he could shoot the three, but it was, what I'm saying, just real hard-nosed, hardcore basketball. And even talking, back to the, Bad Boys Pistons days like that. That's why I'm interested to see, if and I guess when Cade joins that franchise, how different it'll be between the Bad Boys, between the 04 Pistons team, and now the upcoming future of that organization as a whole.
Yeah, I think the common thread in all of that is going to be this workman-like behavior, and it's not the superstar sort of thing. And the Bad Boys maybe had a little bit more of it. But when you think Rick Mahorn or Bill Laimbeer, they weren't superstars. Those are guys that just came in and punched the clock and brought their lunch pail to work and did the stuff down low that they needed to do. But Bill Laimbeer, that was your stretch 5 when there weren't stretch 5s. He was out there shooting threes, and that was late 80s. Come on, man. That stuff just didn't happen back then.
Yeah. Go ahead, Amar. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that in the Cade Cunningham to the Detroit Pistons kind of reminds me of Grant Hill in a way that can play that dual forward type of position, be able to do a lot of things offensively, also defensively as well. And this is the Detroit Pistons' opportunity to get a legit superstar potential guy. And that's who he kind of reminds me of when we talk about Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, I talked to some people who evaluated it and kind of said he's Grant Hill without the explosiveness, but he does everything else well, and he's a better shooter at this stage of his career than Grant was. But again, if you get another chance to get a Grant Hill, you don't mess around with that. Man.
Yeah.
You don't.
Again, the only way that you even talk about a trade is if you're getting number 2 or number 3, and you feel really good about Mobley or Green, and you get something else that and not 2 or 3 draft picks 4 or 5 years down the pipe. You're talking about something that helps you right now to be as good as you would be if you got Cade.
Yeah. And I talked to a couple scouts. The only problem when I hear them talk about Cade Cunningham is that problem they were kind of talking about Ben Simmons coming out of the draft, talking about his motor. Like, how much does he really want it? That's the only thing I'm really hearing. That's, he's similar to Grant Hill, but they also say he could be similar to Ben Simmons as well, just a better shooter than Ben Simmons, less athletic, but also can play that point guard position and get guys open. But the motor is a big question for Cade Cunningham.
If that's the worst thing that they have to say, you know what? I'm still good with that. My motor, okay.
Right,
cool. I'll take that.
Perfect. But the thing is, I will say, though, when we talk about motor, the only unfortunate thing about that is that, like, that's something that no coach can fix.
Yeah.
That would probably scare me. Not to say that he doesn't have a motor.
Yeah.
But like, all right, a jump shot, what I'm saying, whatever, footwork, all that. Those are things that, like, okay, you spend time in the lab, maybe those things can get fixed. You lack motor, we might have bigger problems than, I'm saying.
Andrew Wiggins, guy that's uber talented. They said that about Andrew Wiggins. It's just like, Andrew Wiggins, does he have that motor? And over the course of his career, he's so talented. He should be probably better than what he is, but it's just like, not all guys really have that. So that is a big, like, what do you do? But I think Cade Cunningham going to the Detroit Pistons makes a lot of sense.
So let me say this too then. With Troy Weaver, he kind of figures those things out. When he was with OKC, he's the one that pounded on the table and said, you know what, Russell Westbrook is this guy. Westbrook was projected to be like in the late teens or early 20s as a pick. And Troy Weaver said, you know what? This dude is our top 5 pick. Let's go get this dude. So they had KD. He wanted Russ. He saw the fit there. And he had done all of his due diligence to figure out whether that was the right pick. He's the one that went and got Steven Adams and some of the lesser known guys that built that OKC team. So if there's something like that, like a concern with the motor, with something else, and you see a trade, that might actually be the reason that it happens, is that he's talked to people, he's done his due diligence and kind of said, yeah, you know what? Maybe there's more value in trading this and getting a couple of other pieces than trying to worry about motor. Because like you said, you can't go in the lab and fix motor. Maybe it's a guy that says as a pro, and he gets around some other vets and they help to start that motor a little bit more and to push it. But if you don't have it, it's just hard to really generate that. But we've seen, and what I like about K2 is he had a chance to go to Kentucky and just be another guy, glide through the year and just say, you know what, I'm gonna be a number 1 pick anyway. Let me go to Kentucky, hang out with Cal, and we'll figure it out. He went to Oklahoma State and just said, I'm gonna be the star of my own program and carry all this weight. A lot of guys that do that gamble and they lose on that and they end up falling in the draft a little bit. That dude carried that weight for the entire year and still was the number 1 pick. That's what I give him credit for, that people don't maybe talk about quite as much. As he could have taken the easy road, but he took a harder road for himself.
I mean, that's something to look forward to, though, in Detroit. Like a guy that actually embraces and wants to be a star and wants to be a number 1 option and actually wants that pressure.
Yeah.
You know, not shying away from it. You know?
Yeah. If you look at Oklahoma, he was at Oklahoma State. He went up against Baylor. And Baylor was the best team in college basketball, just won a national championship, and he gave them boys work. So it's just kind of like he's a guy that believes in himself, and he can be an alpha dog. So if it is some questions about his motor, I think going back to like college, like Rod said, it's like, yo, this is a guy that could have gone to Kentucky, but said, you know what, I'm not going to go to Kentucky. I'm going to go to Oklahoma State, and I'm going to do me. I'm going to have this program built around me. I'm going to have all this pressure on me. So I think it's going to get interesting, definitely.
Yeah. And all due respect to Oklahoma State, without Cade, is that even an NCAA team? So you put NBA talent around him and the guys that we talked about and Jeremy Grant, and how much better can Cade be in that type of situation with a big-time rebounder like Isaiah Stewart, with a scorer and defender on the wing with him like a Jeremy Grant? How much better can he be in that type of situation? That's the part that I'm interested in seeing too. How he can elevate his game with NBA players around him.
I mean, it's definitely gonna be an interesting situation for sure. I'm just hoping, you know, that front office doesn't do anything crazy come draft night. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say who should go number 1 or if they should trade it, but I'm hoping they don't fumble it. That's all. I hope they don't.
And that's the worry around here, is that some deal is going to come up, and maybe he tries to be the smartest guy in the room and say, oh, well, I can get 2 picks and future draft picks for all of this. Man, you got the hand, and you got the spades hand, and you got the big joker and the little joker. You don't mess around with trying to, well, let me finesse this. No, you take what you got and you roll with that.
The problem is sometimes people try to overthink situation that they don't have to. Like, this seems like a very layup kind of thing. Like, yo, it's very obvious what should be done here. Let's do it and keep it pushing. But I get it, though. If a crazy offer gets thrown your way, I mean,
ain't nothing
wrong with listening.
I don't know. It's very interesting because I like Cade Cunningham a lot. I think he's going to be the number 1 overall draft pick. But let me tell you something. Like, if they get opportunity, like you said, Rod, and they can get the 2nd overall pick, 2nd or 3rd overall pick, and probably get Jalen Green, a guy to me that looks like he has the ability to be, he's kind of like a Kobe disciple. Hey, we can leave it at that.
But see, it's what's the and in that though?
Exactly.
And a first round pick next year, and maybe a young guy that I feel good about right now. Then we can have that conversation.
Exactly.
The other piece is the Evan Mobley, that dude looks really raw. But on USC's team, when I watch USC games, I'm like, why aren't they giving the big dude the ball a lot more than they are? It seemed like he just got lost in the shuffle a bit. And again, you put him on an NBA team with NBA talent and NBA coaching, Evan Mobley looks like a different player, and he can be a transcendent figure for them too. And when you're talking about centers and traditional centers and stretch centers now, he's the prototype for what that can be. Shoots well from 3, moves really well, rim protector. Those cats don't come along quite as frequently as people think sometimes.
No, they don't. He reminds me. He reminds me kind of like a Chris Bosh. That's what he kind of reminds me of. His
Yeah.
potential and his ceiling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Rob, we just want to say thank you, man. For pulling up, on this episode of No Pump Fakes, man. Definitely,
No, thanks for
Thanks,
having me on, man. If you need anything else, let me know.
for sure.
Thanks,
Absolutely,
Rob.
man. Take care.
All right, appreciate it, man.
All right, so look, shout out to Rob for pulling up, on this episode. Detroit Pistons. But when we talk about Detroit Pistons and that 03 draft, the question, that's got to be asked is, what would have happened if Melo got drafted to that Detroit Pistons team?
I
Like-
mean, yeah.
Just imagine, and I'm gonna say shout out to Darko to me, but just think if Carmelo Anthony was a member of that team and organization, what that would have done, maybe for his career. We talk about fit, all of that.
And he came out and he got drafted in 03 and they won the championship in 04. And it's crazy. So that means he would have been basically a 2-year player, sophomore, during that season with Detroit Pistons. And then you plug him in with Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton. You plug him at the 3. You have Tayshaun Prince at the 4 and Ben Wallace at the 5. And then not only they probably go out and still beat the Los Angeles Lakers, because even as great as the Los Angeles Lakers were with Karl Malone and Gary Payton, who was on the tail end of their careers, there was a lot of tension and turmoil with Kobe and Shaq and that situation going on. So that probably still would have been there. So they probably would have still beat the Los Angeles Lakers because they had they were the best defensive team in the NBA, the greatest defensive team probably arguably of all time. So then you add Carmelo to that. You get a guy that just can come in and just score, not have to worry about anything else. And then after that, Kobe and Shaq separates. Shaq goes down to Miami. Kobe's still with the Lakers. It took them a while to get Kobe the right help with the Los Angeles Lakers. We're looking at probably Carmelo Anthony having, I want to say, at least 2 rings, possibly even 3 rings, if they would have drafted Carmelo Anthony.
And the thing is, what would have worked out so well is Melo would have had the one thing that Detroit Pistons team lacked. And even though they were a great team, like I said, they got a chip.
Great team.
Right?
They had
the one thing that they didn't have was a player that you could just say, yo, go get a bucket. Right?
take us home.
And if there is any player, come on now. Melo would have just said, all right, cool.
And this is a guy.
Let's do that.
This is a guy in Carmelo Anthony that came in. He wasn't like some of these rookies that come in and need time to develop. He came in as a rookie. He was here. You know what I'm saying? It's a legit, people always say this, but it's just like a legit argument could have been made that, Carmelo Anthony deserved the Rookie of the Year award over LeBron James. So it's just like Carmelo was here and his scoring ability was here, like, and his pureness was here, and he was just a puppy. So it's just like, imagine surrounding some dogs around him and grooming them.
And grooming them. Show him in the way, like, hey, yeah.
Yo.
Hey.
It would have been crazy.
It's crazy, though, because it's like, you talked about he probably could have won Rookie of the Year, but you put Melo in, like, probably any other, class that doesn't have LeBron James, and, we're having that conversation. Yeah. And it's crazy to read out, his stats for those. He had 21 and 6 in his rookie year and played in every single game. 21, first of all, 21 and 6 is good for literally any NBA player. Those are like, those are good numbers. Those are good numbers, wherever you're at in your career. Yeah. But as a rookie, come on. You would have
This is crazy. Athletic Melo too. He was
athletic Melo. Like this, like not even just prime, but athletic Melo. Yeah, man. It would have, it would have got spooky. But I mean, obviously, he's had a legendary career. Look, all 4 of the guys on his cover. Let me show it again. Hold up. All 4 of the guys.
Hall of Famers.
Hall of Famers. All right. Y'all go out there, get your copy, 03 draft issue. I got mine. You feel me? Melo, Bron, Wade, and Bosh. What a time. Shout out to Braids Melo, too, by the way. But yeah, what a time. And just to think about, what could have been and everything like that, man. Definitely a special class. This class is going to go down in history. We know that. One of the greatest ever. Got 4 Hall of Famers for sure.
Arguably the best.
Man. Arguably the best. Impact is undeniable. We're saying we know they brought to the table. This episode, man, was just a shout out to them. And everything they done for the game of basketball, not even just on the NBA level, but when we talk about Olympics too, just everything, So shout out, look, man, just shout out to this class as a whole. You got anything else about?
Nah, we good, man. That's legendary greatness. We can end it at that. Special no pump fakes. 03 best ever draft class.
Facts.
That's where we at.
All right, y'all. We're gonna see you next episode. Peace.
It's your boy, Cade Smith, also known as A-Kiss. Make sure you guys go follow No Pump Fakes wherever you get your podcasts.